Hello and welcome along everyone to this fine Thursday evening. Great to have you along with us here tonight. We've got a wonderful presentation for you from Alyssa Smith from the Department of Defence. So my name is Jason Howarth. Just as an introduction, I'm the Associate Head of School from Computing and Mathematics at Charles Sturt University. So as I said, I'm very pleased tonight to present to you Alyssa Smith from the Department of Defence. And Alyssa is going to be talking with us tonight about career opportunities with the Department of Defence across a number of different IT discipline areas. In particular, Alyssa is going to be discussing the types of ICT roles available within Defence, as well as how to make your graduate or direct entry job applications stand out from the crowd. So two very important topics. Just before I hand over to Alyssa tonight, I guess it's a bit of a free plug for CSU and IT Masters. I know many of you will be aware of us. This presentation is brought to you by Charles Sturt University and IT Masters, who are responsible for delivering a number of industry-focused Masters courses in a variety of discipline areas, including computer security. So for those of you who are interested, after Alyssa's presentation tonight, I might spend about 10 minutes just telling you about a few of our programs, particularly in the area of cybersecurity. Okay, and one more thing before we head to Alyssa. A few housekeeping rules. If you have any questions tonight, I know that Alyssa is going to have a few pauses during her presentation for questions. If you have any questions, I'm not going to open up the microphone simply because it'll get a little bit unwieldy if everyone tries to talk. If you have any questions, if I can get you to type them into the questions window, and I will relay those to Alyssa during the presentation, and hopefully we'll get to as many of those as we can. So without further ado, I'll now hand over to Alyssa Smith from the Department of Defence. Alyssa.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's really wonderful to be here with all of you this evening. I know we can't all see each other, but I'm really excited to be talking to you about careers available in the Department of Defence, particularly information communication technology. I need to tell you that this is the ideal time to be studying this type of degree. I am in the human resources area of the Department of Defence. I work in the graduate program in the attraction and talent acquisition side. So my role is to find people who are studying these degree disciplines and to hopefully entice you to come and work for us, or to at least get your application and your interview skills to a level where you'll be able to apply for any sort of ICT role and be really competitive. We need people in all areas of the government and also private industry, and I think a lot of people actually don't realise the Department of Defence has so many ICT options and such diverse careers available. So I'm going to go through different areas of defence and the types of careers that you might look forward to in that type of area, and please feel free to write questions in the question box if you think of anything that you might like to ask me specifically about an area, or I'm also going to go through how to apply for APS roles, so Australian Public Service roles, and what really makes you stand out. We do receive thousands of applications every year for our graduate programs, but also work experience, cadetships, internships and things like that. And there are some things that really stand out to me when I'm reading these applications, and there's sometimes I see applications from candidates who I can tell from their resume are highly talented and very skilled, but they are not quite able to articulate those skill sets into their application, and therefore they don't get to interview, and unfortunately they don't get to come on board and work with us, and it's such a shame sometimes. So hopefully by the end of this session you'll learn about the different types of careers available, how to make your application stand out, and how to perform really confidently in an interview for a role that you might be going for. And I hope that you get a lot out of it, and if there's more clarity you need, please make sure you type a question. So just to clarify first up, in the Department of Defence. So you would have heard about the military side of Defence. They have a fantastic publicity arm. It's actually run by private contractors. So you would have seen all the fantastic advertisements that they do, advertising the military careers in the Department of Defence, where you would wear a uniform, sign an oath and serve overseas. There is also a civilian side to the Department of Defence, where we work alongside our military service women and men to actually achieve the outcomes of the Department of Defence. So there's actually over 17,000 civilian Australian public service employees in the Department of Defence. Now that's a huge number of employees, and we are such a large part of the APS workforce. That means that we're able to offer a massively diverse amount of roles, and it's one of those departments that you can work in, and as you can see from this lovely word cloud here, we're quite proud. We're human resources, so we're not IT professionals. So we were quite proud of developing this word cloud, but I'm sure all of you could do such a better job. Everything from intelligence areas. Department of Defence has 3 intelligence agencies within it. So I'm sure you would have heard of other intelligence agencies such as ASIO or the Office of National Assessments. Well, there's another 3 that are actually part of the Department of Defence, and I will go through them soon, and they are always on the lookout for people with IT skills. We also have a Chief Information Officer group, and we additionally have a capability acquisition and sustainment group, and they basically purchase, maintain and dispose of any equipment that the military needs. And you can imagine in a rapidly technologically expanding world, we need people with computer science in those types of areas to make sure all of our platforms are talking to each other, and we also need to start thinking about space exploration and where that's going to lead to. So it's a really exciting time to be studying the degrees that you're studying, and hopefully I'll be able to provide you some more information about what sort of careers they may lead to. So I'm sure many of you are hearing from your lecturers now that we're not quite sure about what the roles of the future are going to look like. There is such diversity out there, and technology is increasing and expanding so rapidly. I'm actually, for one, quite excited to see what sort of careers are going to be available in the future. I think they're going to be beyond what we can even imagine right now. So first up, I thought I would talk about the Australian Geospatial Intelligence Organisation. Now, usually if I'm talking to a room of people I can see, I'll say hands up who's heard about AGO. We love acronyms in defence. You just kind of get used to it. I think it's a public service thing too. So the Australian Geospatial Intelligence Organisation, they specialise in what's called GeoInt, or Geospatial Intelligence, which is getting an idea of a time, a space and a place. So everything from satellite imagery all the way through to the systems that are going to enable and support that. So an AGO geospatial intelligence technologist would use their IT skills and knowledge to provide high-performance spatial databases, services and technologies that facilitate timely and accurate assessments of geospatial intelligence. So at times people, may look at satellite imagery and then be able to figure out using simple mobile phone applications what those people are doing, how long they've been there for, things like that. And people working in ICT in this organisation can be employed in areas including geospatial data management, application development and web services. So for those of you who are studying more application-based degrees, there is certainly a strong usage of this in the public sector, and particularly within our intelligence agencies. So there's certainly not one clear path available if you are interested in that type of work. As a technologist in this area, you would formulate strategies, undertake strategic IT planning, build and maintain everything from secure workstations to high-end supercomputers. So you'd understand, working in an intelligence area, obviously we're not going to buy anything off the shelf. If anything, a lot of things are going to be created in-house. So that allows some amazing opportunities for people who are quite creative in this area. Or people who want to work in areas like reverse engineering, forensic analysis, intrusion detection in a more cybersecurity aligned space. So if you haven't heard of AGO, or the Australian Geospatial Intelligence Organisation, before, I'm going to put up our Defence Graduate Office website towards the end of this presentation, jump online. You can put in your degree that you're doing and it will tell you what sort of areas you might like to work in. And check out AGO. It's a really interesting line of work, and I know for a fact that they have a rapidly expanding workforce at the moment. So that means that jobs are not only available now, more are going to be available in the future, which is fantastic to know. That you're coming into an organisation that may be growing and expanding rather than downsizing or, you know, sort of sending different parts out to contracting. So it's always something to keep in the back of your mind when you're considering about certain careers and organisations that are a good fit for you, is what's happening in that organisation and what does the 10-year forecast look like. Most organisations should have that sorted, and the information, you know, should be available if you do seek it. All right, so next, the Australian Signals Directorate. Now, I'm sure a few more hands would go up if you were looking at who knows this organisation. So they probably got a bit more popularity towards the end of last year after the census, when they actually were doing some, you know, some investigation analysis about what had happened there. So the Australian Signals Directorate is in the business of safeguarding Australia's government information networks and collecting foreign, electronic and digital intelligence. So it's a really interesting area of work, and you can see, you know, there's cryptographic products and things like that, and they have two distinct areas that you might be interested in working in an ICT capacity. So they need security-savvy software developers who can merge software development and IT security in new and crafty ways, and technically secure specialists who are interested in breaking and securing computer systems to better protect Australia. Really interesting work. Lots of ongoing training and development. Quite often I'm asking for representatives to come and talk at these sorts of presentations with me who work in these areas, who perhaps have completed the graduate program and are now, you know, leading teams. And quite often they can't come and help me because unfortunately they're at a conference overseas, or, you know, they've actually moved overseas for a few years, or they're on a secondment to another department. So it's a fantastic area to come and work in fact, any of the intelligence areas in defence. If you are considering a career that you would actually be paid to increase your learning, develop learning that you couldn't learn anywhere else, and actually be in a space where other people highly value that type of ongoing development and skill sets. I am also aware that they do have an upcoming requirement in their cyber areas, particularly in the area of offensive and defensive cyber, and they will be opening some direct entry rounds in the next few months. So you can actually go directly to their website. You can go via our Defence Graduate website that I bring up, because you can sort of go through and look at different areas of defence that you might like to work in, and you can keep an eye out from that if you are interested in working in this area. They also sponsor a ICT cadetship that's run by the Digital Transformation Agency, the DTA. So it's a whole of government ICT cadetship, and if you're in your first or second year of university and you're thinking, gee, it'd be pretty great to get paid while I'm studying and then perhaps have an ongoing job at the end, the ICT cadetship is something you may like to look at. It may mean that you need to relocate near a hub that you could actually then go and work at, but not always. So it's worth jumping online and having a look. Applications will open in late April, I believe, but I can certainly provide an update to one of your lecturers and let them know when these applications open. Or if you come onto our website and have a look, if you go to other entry level options, there's a tab on the side there that will actually give you information about when that's opening up. So in ASD, they're after cyber and information security roles in our graduate program, software and hardware engineering, networking, computer science, computer and information security, and mathematics. And that's something to keep in mind too if you are someone who loves your pure maths and physics, and I take my hat off to you because I'm very glad I work in the HR area sometimes when I see how brilliant some of these people are who work in the ICT areas, and the way they problem solve it, they're just so brilliant. So I'm glad I'm not competing with them for jobs. So there is really fantastic varied work, and I tell you what, if you've got a language that you know as well, even if you think it's a language that's not super popular, please make sure you note it in your application. Having a language and knowing a language means that you're actually more able to learn new languages more quickly. It's a fantastic skill set to have. I remember talking to a gentleman at a career fair a few years ago, and he said, you know, I studied Russian at school and I thought it was never going to be useful. Well, pretty useful now, so you never know when it's going to come in handy, and if you have a language, fantastic, but if you don't, it's by no means something that would count you out of an opportunity to work in an intelligence area in defence. Defence Intelligence Organisation. Now, while they don't have information communication technology specific roles, they're an all-source intelligence organisation. So if you're doing ICT as part of your degree, or you're thinking of something a little bit different, they provide a lot of advice, assessments and presentations to very senior people in defence. So they're taking information from ASD, AGO, different areas of defence, and compiling a decision about, you know, something that's happening in the world that we need to make sure Australia stays ahead of to ensure all of our citizens are safe. So really interesting work, a very fascinating place to work, and being part of one of the 3 intelligence agencies in defence, amazing opportunities for ongoing development training, further university study that will be fully funded, things like that. Just as another aside, any future training you do once you come on to our grad program, once you complete that and go into an ongoing role in defence, you know, you can apply for study bank and do further study. So for those of you who absolutely love studying, I actually did a degree part-time and had it fully funded by defence. So fantastic opportunity, and very handy to know that, you know, the degree that you're doing now doesn't have to be your last one once you come into the workplace. So we also have a Chief Information Officer group. So as I said, defence is huge. This is yet another group. Now this is not part of the intelligence area. I've gone through those. Those are the 3. If you're not interested in working in intelligence area, I haven't yet, and I've been working in defence for 16 years and have never worked in the same area. So it's a pretty awesome opportunity in that way. So the Chief Information Officer group, they're looking for ICT skills like analysis to work in areas like IT security or architecture. So business and IT skills, so you can work in areas like project management, business analysis or vendor management. So they have IT vendor management, IT project support and management, IT security, cyber and incident response, business architecture, and business analysts. So in the architecture space, they have enterprise and solutions. So really great opportunities there if you're looking at more strategic thinking and moving more into the vendor and contract management space. And look, we'd really like some more IT people in our broader defence area in IT. We have 2 networks. We've got you know, the network that most people use, and also a secret network. And really lots of ongoing areas of trying to develop that, upgrade that, everything from our pay systems all the way through to people trying to work remotely and talk to each other from different bases. So very interesting work, and if you come onto the graduate program and work in this area, you could get the chance to go and work at one of our regional bases, which I've heard is fantastic. If you like a bit of exercise, you can do PT in the morning with the military if you want, or if you're a bit of a late starter, you can go get a coffee from the coffee shop and roll into work when you feel a little bit more awake, which I think is fantastic. That's another bonus about working for the public service. So while private sector, I mean, has some amazing opportunities, don't get me wrong, obviously their pay scales are different, but also their expectations are different. So it's really important when you're looking at the employer that you want to work for that you actually consider, yes, the pay is one thing, but also think about your work-life balance. Are you going to be given time off to have the life that you want, to travel, to adjust your hours around how you work best? Are you really good in the morning? Would you like to come in early and leave a bit early so you've just got some daylight to go play sport? Or, you know, do you like to burn the midnight oil and work late? Is that when you work best? And then you have to sleep in and come in that bit later. The public sector allows you that flexibility. You need to work around 7.5 hours a day. for those 5 days a week, and that's between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. So it's quite a flexible sort of workplace in that sense. And if you have commitments or family commitments, things like that, it's really good to know that you can work around that, and you're not going to be expected to be at work from dusk to dawn and logging on when you get home as well. Though in some areas, you know, there may be peaks and troughs. So moving on from those areas, I also mentioned that it was a capability acquisition of the sustainment group. And for those of you who are studying computer engineering, there are some really interesting roles in that space, enabling our equipment to communicate with each other, and indeed platforms that we have. When I say a platform, I mean a ship or one of our jets. Sometimes the new equipment doesn't come quite in time for the old equipment to be decommissioned, so we've got to keep it going for another 5 years or sometimes even more. So you can imagine some of our platforms can be up to 30 years old. When they were developed, you know, the technology we use now was not even conceived of. So we need people who have that innovative mindset and that computer science engineering focus to actually help us maintain those platforms to keep them going, so they're able to serve our military and our service women and men as absolutely best they can, but also integrate all of these new systems onto them as technology rapidly expands and upgrades. So fascinating work in that area too. In Australian Public Service graduate programs in general, look, most of them are open now. Ours opened this week on Monday, and ours close on the 27th of March. So it's really important to keep in mind that if you are in your final year of your degree now, you need to apply now to get a job at the end of your degree. So if you apply for a graduate program now in your final year, I know you're probably trying to think of thesis topics, you're trying to decide your final subjects, you know, which lecturers you work best with, things like that, and they're all really, really important. But it's also really important to think about actually lining yourself up a job. If you go through the graduate program process, you would put in your application, your written application now. If you're successful, you would be invited to an assessment centre, which I'll go through in a minute. If you are successful at the assessment centre, you'll be given an offer, and you'll know between July and September this year that you have a job to walk into in February next year. So while it looks like you're thinking way in advance, it really does benefit you to consider putting in that application now, even if you're super busy, because your future self is going to be very grateful that you did. So when you're looking at APS graduate programs, research your organisation to find your best fit. Now, when you are looking at organisations, you should be interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. Have a look at their front page and find out what their mission and their vision statement are. What does this organisation stand for? Why would you want to work there? You know, are you going to be able to wake up each morning and feel like your own personal values are aligned with those organisational values? Really important to look at, and it's also a fantastic thing to put in your application. So there's tip one. You may also want to look about current projects they've got going on, and as I mentioned before, you're also really going to want to be aware of where that organisation's going in the future. Are they expanding? Are they downsizing? Are they moving their department to more of a project management approach? Things like that. You want to know if your skill sets and what you're interested in doing in a job are actually going to be there in a few years. Then you're going to download all the relevant information. You usually get a job information pack, and it will tell you all about the eligibility requirements. And it's important to note with Australian Public Service graduate programs or any Australian public service job, you must be an Australian citizen to apply. Now, the reasoning for that is because Australian Public Service literally is serving the Australian public. It is one of our regulations, and we also need people to gain a security clearance. So a security clearance process requires you to be an Australian citizen. It doesn't matter if you were born overseas or you've travelled or you've grown up in different parts of the world. It just matters that you are an Australian citizen when you apply. So make sure you keep that in mind, and if you are on a permanent residency or something like that now, or you're working towards it, then try and get as much work experience as you can in any facets or areas that are available to you, such as if you have a private sector organisation, or even sometimes local and state governments may have options, but get as much of that work in while you can, so that when you're ready to apply for an Australian public service role, when your Australian citizenship comes through, you've got that work experience to demonstrate that you've been proactive during that time, and it will really help you in your application when you're ready to apply. Now, a good application is your first opportunity to make an impression. Please use it. As I mentioned, time and time again, I see people with highly skilled people. They've done, got high distinction grade point averages. They've got relevant work experience in their resume, and then in their application they write 1 or 2 sentences per question. That's really tough when we're reading it, because we are actually obliged by government to run merit and selection processes that are fair and equitable. And to ensure fairness and equitability, we need to assess people against their answers to the questions or the selection criteria that we ask in the online application. So if people don't put effort in at that point, we actually can't give you a high ranking, and therefore if we're getting thousands of applications, your application is not going to move to the top of the pile, even if your resume is amazing. So please keep that in mind, and also keep it in mind if perhaps your grade point average has suffered for various reasons. You had a bad semester, you took some time off, or you took a while to find your way about the type of degree you wanted. That's not so much of an issue. This is where going in and applying directly for a job, for one of these graduate programs, you're really going to stand out if you put time and effort into that application. This is where the final point comes up here. Apply for jobs that you genuinely want. This really shines through in your question and your selection criteria. If you're applying for jobs that you genuinely want, you're actually going to do great research on the organisation, and it's going to shine through in your application. And the person reading it, it's very pleasing to read when you see someone who's super keen to work for you. You're excited about having them on board, and that always helps applications get close to that top of the pile. So when you're applying for a graduate program, you need to address selection criteria. And I know that sounds like a scary couple of words, but really all it is questions. And what's great about this is, and studying technical degrees, as all of you are studying, I'm sure, you know that for any sort of problem there is a solution, and there's a formula that helps you get to that solution. The STAR method is used constantly and has been used regularly for a long time because it works. So it stands for situation, that's the S, task, actions, and results. So I'm happy to send round this presentation as a PDF later next week if anyone's interested in actually who's looking at applying for maybe a graduate program or perhaps an ICT cadetship or something in the next few months. I'm happy to send through a PDF of this sort of information just so you can use it as a reference point when you're writing your first application. So with this STAR method, the situation, you don't want to be spending a lot of time on this. You just want to set the scene for the person reading your application. You're taking them on a bit of a journey, a story. And if you set it out well, it's easy to read, it's easy to assess and mark, and it's more likely to get you a much better mark. So if you set it out with a situation, so I've seen great examples from people who are technical, but perhaps during getting their degree, they've actually worked at KFC during to actually fund their way through university. And I've seen some great examples from that. So be willing to think outside your technical profession for other examples. So a situation could be you're working at KFC and the manager was sick and couldn't show up, and you had to take over the shift, managing that shift for the next 4 hours. So you don't have to spend a lot of time on the situation, just give the context. The next piece is T, the task. So what did you actually have to do? So you needed to ensure that the shop was shut up in time, you needed to make sure people took their lunch and dinner breaks, you needed to ensure that the machines were cashed up at the end of the day, things like that. Again, you can use dot points, it's absolutely fine. Just don't spend too much time here, you're just, again, getting further context. The next part is the actions. Now this is where you want to spend the majority of your word count. This is where you can really show that you're a person who thinks strategically and someone who thinks logically. So with your actions, this is you talking about what you did. Now, I'll give you a very, very big tip here. If you are talking about teamwork, if you're asked to give an example about teamwork, in your actions, please talk about what you did. It's great if your team won the soccer tournament or, you know, got the highest score for a group assessment at the end of university. Awesome example. But please don't tell me what the team did. Tell the assessor what you did to help the team achieve that result. So it might be that you delegated the tasks to the other members of the team according to their skills. So you knew that someone was quite outgoing, so you gave them the presentation role, and perhaps you knew that someone else was a lot shyer but really good with details, so you gave them the job to edit the final document. So make sure you're talking about what you did in the action part, and sometimes I find with highly technical people, because things are so obvious to you, you think, well, A plus B equals C. It's just logical to you. But remember, the person reading your application isn't necessarily across everything that you're talking about and may not have been exposed to that type of technology, or may just not be quite aware what you mean. So make sure you show you're working out, just like you would in an assessment, a piece for university. You can't just say, I decided this just because. You talk about why. I made this decision, or I decided on this course of action because it was the less risky. It meant that I would achieve the outcomes in a short amount of time, and each of the team members got a chance to contribute and learn and develop during the process. So make sure you show you're working out. The R is your result, and this can just be maybe one sentence. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of information, and it can sometimes just be, as a result of taking over this shift at KFC, I made sure everything was cashed up on time, everyone took their dinner break, and the team was, you know, it was a great team environment during the time. I also found out later that we were highly productive during this time, and the amount of financial turnaround we had during that shift had actually increased. So, you know, if that happens, great, but if all the result is that you get a good grade from your lecturer, or your team members really thank you for helping them through the process if they found it difficult, that's absolutely fine too. But it just wraps up your story, and it takes your assessor reading your application to the end of your journey. You'll also need to provide an up-to-date CV or resume. Keep it to 2 pages. If you are doing a lot on the side of your degree, so perhaps you're learning some really detailed programming languages and things like that, you can add a bit more information there. But make sure you keep it brief, and we don't need to know which primary school you went to or anything like that, just or really your high school. It's just basically your qualifications up to now and anything that's relevant to that type of role. So you really want to tailor your resume to the roles you're applying for. You'll need a referee. If you haven't had a chance to work a great deal outside university, that's absolutely fine. Sometimes a lecturer who's worked with you or a thesis supervisor might be willing to, or even someone that you work for at your local church, or you work closely with, or you help coach the local soccer team with, things like that. They can be referees also. Now, you will need to have a checkable background for security clearances. Depending on the level of clearance you apply for, it can be anything from a baseline clearance. Most public service organisations are going to ask for at least that level, all the way up through to a top secret positive vetting clearance. Now, that's what you will need to work in intelligence agencies, and for that you need a whole of life checkable background. So that means all of your overseas travel, your birth certificate, marriage certificate, citizenship certificates, things like that. If you don't have them with you right now and you're looking at applying for graduate programs, maybe give whoever would have those a call, like your mum or dad, or a relative, or just you need to go through your filing system in the back of your cupboard, like most of us have to. Find those things down. If you don't have them, order a new one. Get one ready to go, because the quicker you get that information in, if you're given an offer and said, yep, you've got the job, but you need this level of clearance, you'll then be directed to a portal to put in your application for a security clearance online, and you will need all of those documents. So start thinking thinking about that now, and if you've got lots of relatives overseas, probably good to make sure you've got their address and contact details because you may need to provide those. The reason we ask for security clearances is because the information that we provide, and expose our people to, we need to know that they're trustworthy to have that information because our mission is to defend Australia and its national interests, and we need to ensure that any information that is shared is in safe hands, and I'm sure that you can understand the reasoning for that. If relevant, identify yourself as Indigenous or a Torres Strait Islander or a person with a disability. Now that is only so we can make sure that this process is as equitable as possible. We certainly don't want to single anyone out or treat them differently. It is purely to make sure that if you need extra support to get through the application process, that you are provided with that. We are very much committed to being a diverse and inclusive organisation. So if you have a disability, please don't feel uncomfortable about identifying. Our team are amazing and we're very keen to make sure the process is as fair for you as it is for anyone else, and that means you need extra support. Fantastic. We've got lots of different creative ways of supplying that, and we really look forward to receiving applications from everyone. Just a quick do's and don'ts. The APSC, that's the Australian Public Service Commission. Make sure you read the Cracking the Code. You can Google it, or if you do opt in to get a PDF of this sort of PowerPoint presentation after this, I can provide you with the actual direct link to that area. Get someone to check over your application for spelling mistakes. Please make sure you do this. It is amazing how many people write a great application, but maybe just haven't had that extra time to write over it. So if you don't leave your application to the last minute, you could send it through to a friend, family member, even if you talk to your careers area, book in an appointment and send it through to them. Get them to have a look over it and give you some advice. Make sure you don't skip any selection criteria. If you can't think of an idea, do some brainstorming, think outside the box, consult other people and get some help. Make sure you answer the questions, because if you don't, we actually can't progress you any further. Everyone has to answer all the questions in the online application. So a recruitment process for a graduate program, and indeed probably any direct entry that you're going to go into, will probably include an online cognitive test. So for those of you who are technically minded, like all of you are, you'll probably find this cognitive test a lot easier than I did. I recently had to go through one. I did not like the numeric reasoning. So you will be invited to go and do this online cognitive test and be given a link. You'll probably be given a few days to do it. Make sure you choose a time that you will not be distracted and a time that you work best. So you know if you're an early morning person or a late afternoon person or an evening person, do your test then. If you're interested in an intelligence area, you'll go into a screening session. Now you can't prepare for those. So online cognitive testing, you can do free tests online. They'll probably try and make you buy something, but look, there's lots of different websites you can go to and do practice tests. I highly recommend you do, because no matter how smart you are, online cognitive testing is a skill set. You can learn it and you can develop in it. So definitely spend some time doing this. Your future self, again, will be very thankful. Screening sessions you can't prepare for, they're psychological assessments. You just go along and you just be 100% honest and open, and you're most likely to get the best outcome by doing that. Assessment centres, so they're for all of our graduate programs in different areas. They generally consist of a panel interview, a written exercise. Panel interview sounds scary. It's like 3 people, someone like me and a technical person to talk to you, so they can actually talk to you on your level about what sort of role and where your understanding is in the area that you're interested in. A written exercise, a group discussion. Now, there is this beautifully fine line between saying nothing during the group discussion and being a dictator and taking over the whole thing. Group work is about being a team player, not the boss. So keep that in mind and make sure you contribute, but that you seek contributions from other people too. You may also need to do a technical aptitude test. Now, we're not going to sort of say surprise physics or anything like that. It will be more about the type of area that you're interested in, maybe some coding languages if that's your interest, architecture, system setups, things like that. So again, you can prepare for a technical aptitude test, make sure you go over your 101s, and if there's any outside areas of interest that you have, make sure you let the technical people who are assessing you know that you are interested in those areas, because then they'll know to set up a test to be specific for what you're after. Now, if you get through all of this, it sounds huge, but you'll do the online application now. Assessment centres wouldn't be until mid-year, and screenings would be done around those times. Now, if you are in a regional area, you'll be flown to a capital city to come along to one of our assessment centres. So, and then you'll be provided with accommodation if you need it overnight. But if you don't, you'll just be flown up, say, to Sydney or Melbourne for the day, depending on where you're based. So it's a great opportunity and a great experience, and you'll meet lots of other people who are applying, but you'll also meet senior leaders from the organisation, because they are so keen to meet the future leaders of our organisation and our graduates. They have really invested in that process, which I think is fantastic. So it's a great chance to ask them about where they think the organisation's going and where you think you might fit. We also make sure we bring ex-graduates along to these assessment centres, so you can see people we've prepared earlier and you can see that they're humans, they've gotten through this process, and now they're thriving in their ongoing roles in the department. So if you are given an offer, you'll know by between July and September this year that you're successful, and then you've got a job starting in February the following year, which is fantastic to know. Now, during the program, you'll be given 3 different rotations. The first one you tend to be placed into just based on your interests and how well you did during, the assessment centre. They get a better idea of what you're interested in. So, that will be in probably what's called your home team, the area that you may end up in. Your second rotation, you might do your first rotation, say 4 to 6 months there, and think, that's really not for me. I'm really not enjoying the more data side. I want to be more on the creative side. So you can talk to your supervisors and your graduate managers, because you'll have a team looking after you plus local supervisors. And you may want to rotate to an area that's a bit more into your interests. And then you get to do an external rotation, so totally outside of your area. So that may be with industry, that then contracts back into defence, just to give you an idea of what it looks like on the other side. Or it may be, if you're working in an intelligence area, you may come out and work in a corporate, like Chief Information Officer group, and just get a different idea. Or you might get to go work in the Minister's office. Like, our external rotations are really interesting, and our graduates get to do some amazing things. If you need to relocate to do your rotation, you are paid to do so. And if you've got everything from a box of things because you're living in a group house all the way up to a husband, a kid and dogs, whatever, we can move all of them too. So you're given obviously that support, so you're not out of pocket having to move if you need to. If your situation is that you cannot, you need to just move, say, to Canberra and stay there, that's fine too. We can certainly work around that process with you. All right, so important information. Our applications are open now. There's a website. I'd love you to go online and have a look. We have done a lot of updating. I'm sure all of you can think about ways we could do it even better. But, we had to contract one organisation to do that for us. Type in your degree, and you can actually have a look at all the different areas that might be relevant for you, and do some digging deeper into what those areas of defence are like, and what sort of work they do, and where you might like to focus your skill sets and learn more. Okay, so that's probably enough from me for now. I may hand back over and see if there might be any questions.
Okay, thanks, Alyssa. Jason here. There are a few questions, and I've got to say we've reached capacity tonight as well, unfortunately, in terms of the number of people connecting to the webinar. So I think, I don't want to put you on the spot, Alyssa, but I think there's scope here for another one very soon, because there are a number of people who couldn't get in. We'll talk about that, but I'll make the recording available to everyone as soon as I can. But it's great to see the level of interest of people here tonight. Look, I'll go through the questions. I'll just read them out to you in the first name of the person who asked. And we can just do them one by one. So apologies too if any of these have been answered. But Dave has asked, is there an age cap or limit for applications specifically in regard to the Department of Defence?
Okay, so no, there's no age cap. If you are a mature age student studying or changing, your interests or your degree or your qualifications, absolutely no worries. We have very diverse graduate cohorts everywhere from people who are just freshly graduated to people who've even skipped grades, so they're quite young, all the way through to, people who've had a transition in their 50s. So, that there's certainly no age limit, and we do encourage people to come through our graduate program. One of the really unique benefits of coming through a grad program is that you get different rotations in the organisation. You're not just applying for one job, you get developed in 3 different jobs, and at the end of it you have an ongoing position. But you also develop all these networks of all the different people who have joined the graduate program at the same time as you. So you develop these networks that are like being at school again. You get quite close to them, and then these people go out into the workforce and you have them to lean on in your future career. So if you need something moved through quickly and your boss is like, oh, I really wish we knew someone in that other group, I don't know anyone and I can't get someone to answer this about this brief we need done, you'll know someone, guaranteed, just because of your grad program, or you may have worked there in your external rotation.
Yep.
So it makes you highly competitive. And if you're very experienced already, while you may start as a grad, you'll probably move up through to the leadership roles a lot more quickly.
Okay, that's great. So that's similar, I guess, to Wayne's question, who's had a lot of years in IT and just wanting to know about opportunities for experienced professionals as opposed to just graduate roles. But you're saying that even if they applied for a graduate role, they're likely to move up the ladder very quickly, or certainly a possibility?
Definitely. And if you are looking for direct entries, as I mentioned, the Australian Signals Directorate, ASD, they're going to have a lot of upcoming roles soon. And we do have direct entry available regularly. You can go to the Australian Public Service Gazette or apsjobs.gov.au, and you can select defence there and see what jobs they have available that you think might be relevant. I have seen so many IT jobs advertised on there lately at many various levels, so all the way up to executive levels where you'd be managing large amounts of staff, down to developmental roles. So always keep your eye on the Public Service Gazette, because we do have a lot of jobs being offered there quite regularly.
Okay, we've got one here from Leander. Are there any issues with dual nationals working in defence, the Defence Force?
So Department of Defence, no. So as long as you've got Australian citizenship, that's the key.
Okay, great. Okay, a number there about people with existing qualifications. I think we've already answered those people. You don't necessarily need to be a fresh graduate.
No.
A few others about cut-off age. I think we've addressed those. So really, I think most of the questions are similar around in terms of the age and the qualifications, and obviously there's a lot of scope there for people with different levels of experience. Well, what about someone, I've just accidentally minimised my window, someone with industry certifications as opposed to academic qualifications? What chance would they have of gaining entry?
Yeah, definitely have a look at our direct entry roles. So for the graduate program you need to have had a degree, but for a direct entry role I recently sat on a panel for offensive and defensive cyber positions, and a lot of those people may not have had direct qualifications, but they were highly experienced in programming languages or different types of network administration, and they had practical experience, so they were still competitive for those types of roles. So there's definitely scope there to apply for a direct entry role, and as I mentioned, those are continuing to ramp up.
Okay. This is from Graham, are all the jobs based in Canberra, or are there permanent positions in Melbourne and Sydney?
Okay, so for the intelligence areas, generally yes, Canberra. There are a limited number of positions available in Sydney at times, but it depends on your area of specialty. If you're interested in working in the capability acquisition and sustainment group in the more computer science, computer engineering space, they do have permanent roles available in Melbourne and Sydney, and also throughout Australia. Our shipbuilding workforce is really ramping up at the moment, and they have roles in Adelaide and also Perth. So if you are looking at travel, that is an option too. But generally, our intelligence and our project management base positions are based in Canberra because we're right next to the government. It's one of those things. But if you need to relocate, particularly for the grad program, you are funded to relocate, so you're not out of pocket, which is a benefit. Yeah.
Okay. One from Erin. What APS level do graduates start at, and what level do you go to after the end of the program?
Okay. So you start as an APS 4. And once you successfully complete the program, depending on your performance during the program, so if you're a very high performer during the program, you can advance to up to an APS 6 position. The secretary will, your supervisor may go to the secretary and say, this is a high performer, can they please advance at a higher level, just to recognise, the level of effort you've put in, or perhaps your existing skill sets that you've brought to the program. But regardless, when you finish the program, you finish as an APS 4. And then you're a permanent employee in the department, and you can start. The great thing about the public service is, every year, if you perform well in your role, you will go up an extra increment of pay and get paid at a higher level. And then when you actually graduate off your program, you have that opportunity to move through, and you can apply for other jobs that are available and move up through the ranks that way too.
Yep. So I think some of these questions have been answered, but Tony has asked, he already has an Australian government security clearance from an earlier job.
Right.
He's got 30 years ICT experience, and he's currently doing a degree at CSU, but I guess the implication is he hasn't finished that yet. Would they be valued in the application?
Definitely.
Yep.
Most definitely. So if you wanted to apply for a direct entry role, you may be looking at the APS 6 EL1 sort of areas, or maybe EL2. You've got experience managing teams, and I would strongly recommend you keep an eye on those positions because they are going to be coming out more and more soon. And look, if you're still studying, I would recommend, if you're looking at applying for an intelligence area, apply for a job soon. It can take 12 to 14 months to get a security clearance at that high level. So it doesn't hurt to apply now if you've still got a year and a bit left of your qualification, because by the time you get your clearance, you'll probably have your qualification. But as far as the graduate program, they're given priority. Their clearances are given priority, which is why they run through a bit quicker. But you would certainly be welcomed in the graduate program, but if you want to go for something a bit more high level and more challenging, commensurate with your current skill set, the direct entry roles would be ideal.
Yep. Okay, Simon has asked, I don't know, we've mentioned Canberra, but he said that the ATO is quite progressive in developing virtual teams that allow many jobs to be available in every state. Is Defence also looking at ways to develop those kinds of virtual teams to allow people to work in Defence outside of primary employment sites such as the ACT?
Yeah, I commend the ATO for their work in that area, and I've heard that they show up to their meetings with iPads and things like that, and they're all connected to the network. Defence is a little bit different in the high levels of security and firewalls that we need. So if you work in an intelligence area, you would work in a specific area, and obviously there's very strong protections around those areas. So there's reasons for things being specifically based in one building, because it costs a lot of money and time and effort to get those buildings set up to be as secure as they are required to be. That being said though, we do have bases all throughout Australia, and sometimes people may need to work in different areas or work remotely. I do work from home from time to time, but I don't work in an intelligence or secure area. So there are those options once you become part of the organisation, but they're not sort of set up when you first commence, I guess. So you can apply directly for a role in your state or your local area and establish yourself there. And I'm hoping, as systems and security improve, and with more highly talented people in the ICT area, maybe that's something we can look at in the future. But it's not an area that we're progressive in at the moment, purely because of the multiple considerations that we have in security.
Yep. Okay, look, I think we've answered, Alyssa, most of the core questions. Thank you so much for coming along tonight and presenting to us. I know that everyone who was here appreciated that. A number of people, as I said, couldn't get in. I'd really like to get you back again in the very near future to hold another one, because I think given we reach capacity here, I think there's scope to have another few hundred people listen to the same message. So thanks once again. Now what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take back control of the screen, and if I can, yep, I'm going to make myself the presenter. And for those who are interested, I'm just going to go through a couple of courses, in fact one main course from Charles Sturt University. I don't sort of want to ram this down your throat, so it's entirely voluntary whether anyone stays for this. I'll be quite quick because it is getting late. But a big thank you to Alyssa for coming along, giving up her time tonight. Thank you for everyone who attended. I do hope that you all have success in any application you make for either the graduate position with Defence or any direct positions. So I'm hoping you can see my screen again, and again I want to be quite quick. CSU has a great number of undergraduate and postgraduate programs. You can see them there on the screen, ranging from computer science to information technology. As Alyssa has mentioned, to get into the graduate program you need a degree. I mean, degrees are great to have anyway to help you stand out from the crowd. We also have a number of postgraduate programs which you can see on the right that extend across different discipline areas, including cloud computing, information system security, mobile applications development and networking. And the Master of Information System Security is just the one I want to highlight very quickly. It's a 12-subject Masters consisting of 8 core subjects and 4 electives. It's very much industry focused in that many of the subjects included within the program link to specific industry certifications. So if you do have an industry certification, you can in fact apply for credit if it's relevant to the program. This degree is designed to be studied part-time, online, and can be completed in that mode of study within 2 years. And there are in fact avenues of entry for people without an undergraduate degree but who have extensive experience in the industry. We are typically looking for at least 3 to 5 years in a reasonably senior role. So if you're feeling you don't have an undergraduate degree and you're locked out from some of these postgraduate programs, that's not the case. Please give me a call or email me. It's certainly possible that there's a pathway into our postgraduate masters. CSU is a leader in distance education or online education, so webinars like this are a key feature of many of our courses. In terms of the study requirements, we offer sessions 3 times a year. It takes about 10 hours per week to study one subject, so it's not an overly onerous commitment, and we're very flexible in that you can do anywhere between 1 and 4 subjects in a session, so you can fast track or you can scale back if needed, or even take leaves of absence. So as with many other businesses and services, we're very flexible in that regard. I mentioned credit. If you have industry certification, for example, if you have a CISSP, you could certainly gain credit into the master's program, which cuts down both the length and the cost. The cost is written there on the screen. It's $31.50 per subject over a 12-subject degree. For international DE students, slightly higher. Textbook costs are included within that fee, and you should speak to your accountant as well because he may be able to get you a refund in terms of your own personal development education on some of the fees that you pay. You could also be eligible for a government loan to help defer those fees so you don't have to pay them up front. So there are different payment options there. I mentioned that there are different pathways into our master's programs, ranging from having an undergraduate degree within a related discipline or within a discipline that's entirely different, and certainly the one that CSU I think is most focused on is people coming in with professional experience. So many people got into the IT industry as younger people without necessarily going through a university pathway, developing experience, never got the undergraduate degree. In many ways that would be over the top now because there's no point learning introductory stuff that you're already aware of. So we do allow an entry pathway for people without an undergraduate degree. The 3 sessions that start this year and that you can potentially enrol in. We have a session starting on the 27th of February. If you're super keen, you would have to get your application in by tomorrow to take advantage of that session. We have another session starting on the 10th of July and another one starting the middle of November. You can see there you can apply online, csu.edu.au/apply. And if you want any more info about anything tonight academic, feel free to email me, jhowarth@csu.edu.au. My phone number also on screen. Always happy to hear from potential students. If you have any comments about the webinar, happy to hear that as well. And I'm sure that you can also contact Alyssa if you have any further questions about her presentation. So that's it. We've come to the end. It's just gone after 9 o'clock, which I guess is enough for all of us. So thanks very much, everyone, for coming along tonight. I will make the recording available. Thanks so much to Alyssa for being so generous with her time, and have a great evening, everyone.